Was there Shiraz? It was interesting when you were telling that story, because usually, I forget which story I've told to who, right? But Joanne and I went on a holiday in Adelaide, and Joanne likes drinking wine, and I don't. Anyway, so we went to this place, and she says in a really loud voice, "My husband doesn't like drinking wine. He says it's disgusting and it's awful." I'm going, "Oh, don't say that." So this lady says, we're at a boutique winery, and they have the oldest vines in Adelaide. They saved them from a place that was getting ploughed. And she said, "Look, I've just opened up this bottle of wine. I can't remember what it was. It was a very rich, thick red wine. Just open it up. It's it's $250 a bottle." She said, "Try this." Yeah. When you were doing this, I went, I know that. And usually my response is to the wine, it starts to burn right here, and then I feel it burning all the way down, and I hate that feeling. It's like heartburn. But I drank this wine, here it just goes, here it goes, whoa. It's like, instead of going, burning, it's like, oh, that was nice. I said, "Oh." She said, "What do you think?" I said, "Oh, that's rather nice." Joanne says, "Yeah, he's got bloody expensive tastes." And it's true. We go walking in the shop and I go, "Oh, I really like that." And we go over the price tag and it's like, "Oh, okay, I can't afford that." So it is, that whole taste experience is interesting. Yeah. Yesterday, I was playing with this in front of you. Remember, I was giving you this this business of standing. Remember balancing here? And I had this guy here, and I said, "Look, you can find a point of balance," and it kind of stays upright by itself. Yeah. And then I said something about it will continue to fall, but the bones are linked together through the connective tissue, through the periosteum. Hey, you feeling okay? You feeling before? Yeah. Okay. Well, the story that I was telling you yesterday, it's only half the story, because it's based on That's good. I like it. Yeah, it's very good. It's only half the story. Why didn't I think of that? It's only half the story because it's based on old style thinking. The old style of thinking about the skeleton, like every other structure in the world. You know, things stacking on top of one another, and we see this like, okay, so this is blocks, and there's blocks on top of blocks, and even though the ends are rounded, it's still thinking of block on top of block. And now there's a sorry, excuse the pun, now there's a new kid on the block, and the new kid has a new name, and it's called Biotensegrity. And some of you go, "Oh, I know what that is," right? And that theory suggests that in our animal framework here, that nothing is really in contact with anything else, that the bones are suspended, floating in, if you like, all these elastic cords. And in the synovial joints, you have a hydrostatic pressure that keeps the joint surfaces apart. So really, surface does not touch surface. If you can think two-dimensionally of the skeleton being suspended inside, there being a spider's web in your skeleton, and the bones being suspended in the spider's web, That's the beginning of biotensegrity. And I think, Kevin, remember you brought in the tensegrity model? When you start thinking like that, that's a completely different ballgame. That's like thinking if I'm wearing well, as a dancer, I should tell you this story. There was one of the people who hired me to work at his dance department at University of New South Wales. I can say his name. He's a really nice guy. David Spurgeon. Well, let's just say he was portly. But he used to wear a unitard, you know, so a complete unitard. Like, but he was a happy guy, so he didn't care what he looked like. But anyway, so you can imagine if you're wearing an all-over unitard and you pull a little of that unitard, the tension changes all the way through. It does. Or like you're walking along the street and you accidentally go past a tree and you catch your knitted top on something. It catches, and then the whole top deforms. So this is the concept of here. This morning when you were on that roller and you were giving a little bit of a push here and a little bit of a push there, structurally, everything changes. What's the difference? Sometimes the nervous system tries to keep things constant through tensioning. So rather than everything being changeable, there's a habit that you have, and maybe the habit is right about here with some people. They go to, yeah, and doesn't matter how you try to move them, they'll move around everything. The whole spider's web will change except there, because they're keeping that constant and they don't know that they're doing it. So how do we get around them not knowing? We try to create conditions where they get to know. Yeah, that's what we try to do. Now, that's not doing something to them. That's creating a scenario where something new can happen, and then they have a new experience and they go, wait a minute, that's different. I never do that like that. So you haven't done something to them. You've created a scenario where a possibility appears. Might be just for a little moment, but nevertheless, it's a possibility. Now, this is what Feldenkrais was on about in the very first week of Amherst. I think it's even could be even the end of the first day of Amherst. If you want to know what the Feldenkrais method is about, listen to the first day of Amherst. He tells you everything. Everything you need to know about the Feldenkrais method is in that first day. Everything else is elaboration and more detail. So at I think it's maybe the second last ATM, he asked the group, why do we lie on the floor? To be out of gravity. What do you mean out of gravity? You can't be out of gravity. You're on planet Earth. You can't be out of gravity. So that's a nice idea, but that's not what it's about. So he's doing his usual Feldenkrais, I'm the teacher, I know, you know nothing, and then as soon as you say something, I'll shoot you down because you have to be able to defend yourself. You know, that's his assumption. I'll push back, you need to defend. But you know, a lot of people aren't like that. So eventually, he relents and he tells the students what lying on the floor is about. So he says, look, when you're standing in relationship to the floor like this, in the field of gravity, all the usual sensations that you use to regulate things by, to control things by, they're firing. And you're correcting for that. As soon as there's a deviation from what is familiar, you will correct back to the familiar. So now how do we get around that? Well, first of all, you know, they've done research and they found that the ankle joints are huge proprioceptive areas for control. Here in the hip joints, yeah, around here. So what do? We take them out of the situation where all those all those triggerings are happening continuously into a not so novel situation, because we all lie down to go to sleep, don't we? I saw it. You all lined up. Yes. We all have a little bit of a variation, but when we want to go to sleep, in other words, when we want to shut our system down from the usual conscious self, we lie down. There's another story he tells, but of learning how to sleep, standing upright, leaning on a rifle. But that's another story. So, yeah. So we lie on the floor, and that relieves us of all the usual triggers. And then he says something really, really interesting, which Lisa and I were having a conversation about earlier. He says, you know, the best environment, because you know this segment is about crafting environments. I'm part of the environment. What I say is part of the environment. The stool is part of the environment. Having a video going is part of the environment. He says, the best environment would be if you had a big tub filled with water that had a saline solution. Because you know you float better in the sea than you do in a river, because it's got, I don't know what the hydraulics is. Now, and if that water was heated up to a body temperature, when you're in that water, suspended for a while and not moving too much, the slightest little touch, it's like the whole system goes, yeah? Goes from no noise to suddenly a little perturbation, and whoa, it wakes up. He said, now, that way you could do FIs with hardly anything and create these contrasts. And when Lisa told me, because I've been wanting to go into a float tank, it's a float tank, right? I've been wanting to do a float tank for a while. I'm thinking, yeah, that'd be cool. But then you said what you said this morning. What did you say? Tell all.
I said, I've been in a flotation tank.
Yeah, did you?
I did. So it was quite a while ago. And somebody gave me a voucher. I would never have taken myself there on my own. But so, you're in this very dark, silent, floaty place. And I thought, well, this is going to be a very long, boring time. And then I moved my arm and I went, oh.
How did you go?
I went, oh. Look at that. And then I moved my toe and I went, oh, look at that. So each little tiny movement was exactly what Zoran was saying. It was like just any direction, any part of me, anything was just moved the whole, just so you could feel all these little shifts in you, the way that that I was lying in the water. But, it would be interesting to go in now because I could not let go of my head. That was what I could feel, was that this bit just didn't want to let go. But my hope would be that now, many years later, I might be able to get to that point. And it would be interesting to feel that shift in this. But yeah.
And is it on? Yes, it's on. So you see, water, and I rudely said the other day, we're just bags of water. Not much. Yeah, we kind of are, really. So if you think of the evolutionary progress, they say that we evolved in the sea and we carry that salinity in us, within our bloodstream, within our fluids in our bodies. So we're kind of carrying. So we can hold ourselves. And here's my suggestion to you. We can hold ourselves in a manner where we conserve, I'm going to use that word, we conserve our fluidity. We can also hold ourselves in a manner that when you put water under pressure, water does not compress. Yeah. When you put water under pressure, that's a really powerful force. And yeah, I showed you guys that trick in your first year. Remember with the bottle? Remember that video? I showed you that video. Don't you remember? Yeah. When you hold the bottle's full of water, you go whack at the top and the bottom. I was going to test you on that. So it's that powerful. But if you hold the water pressure in the musculature, in the joints, just right, it feels like you're floating. Yeah? If you rigidify somewhere, like I just did, I can float around in other places, but why do I keep on going back here? Because this is where my trouble is, that's why. Yeah. If I rigidify here, it doesn't feel like floating. It feels like, I've got an anchor here. So in this, as we go from the ATM into hands-on practice, the person who is going to offer themselves to be practiced with, please continue to look for in yourself that sensation of, you've all been in a swimming pool at about shoulder level and you get that sensation of floating. How many of you have been brave enough to put floaties on your arms? You know those floaties that kids have? So that you feel that you're floating. It's a really nice feeling. Yeah, this is how I used to train up in Darwin in the evening when no one was watching. Because in Darwin, no one goes to the pool at night because it's too cold. 24, too cold. I'm thinking, oh, it's great. And so you put on the floaties and you feel what it's like to actually float. So as you're being moved around, those of you who are offering yourselves, see if you can generate in yourself that sensation of floating, which is the whole notion of tensegrity. And if you can find that, you'll benefit as much as the person who's doing the exploring. It'll be a two-way street. Yeah, so that's the invitation. What we're going to do, we're going to split off into 2 groups. Now, you were working in pairs this morning. If you want to stay in those pairs, you're welcome to stay in those pairs. If you want to switch to another person, switch to another person. But basically, I'll be on that side. You want to be near the loos or do you want to be near the exit? So anyway, so split yourself into 2 and Lisa will facilitate some of you and I'll facilitate the other. But it's the same ATM FI process. You'll be doing most of the exploring. We'll be offering suggestions and you can interact with us as you wish, ask questions. So it's a very kind of to-y, fro-y process and we'll set up the design for you. Okay? Before we split, anything on your mind, any questions coming forth? 2, 1, 0, go. Let's go. Thank you, Lisa.